Yeah? I have a question. Okay, that was crazy. When you're acting, like when you're on set, and okay, first of all, okay, I always do this. I launch into things.
Right, I'm with you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey. When you're, first of all, can you cry on demand for acting purposes?
I don't know about like on demand, but if I can just have like enough work done up here, like I just let me think about like the most horrendous things I can think of, and then I will get there.
Is that what you do?
That is what I do.
You think? Oh, so you think scary bad thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Follow-up question. If you are prompted to have to like laugh on set, do you do the same thing? Do you like do you fake laugh like we were just doing? Or do you like actually think of something that just makes you laugh?
I think I kind of fake laugh, actually. I don't really do that with the crying. I think I would try to. Like, I don't just think of something random unless I'm like really flustered and struggling. But if I have the time to do the work, I will try to connect what I'm saying to my own life experiences, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because what I am able to do, like if the words that I'm saying are very emotionally charged, I can cry.
Exactly.
If they're powerful, like I will get there.
Well, because the thing about acting too is like it's believing the situation you're in. So like if you are needing to laugh on camera, you're like believing what's happening is funny, and like also what's happening is sad.
Which in a way, I think acting like something is funny when it's not. I think that's harder than crying.
It can be. It certainly can be. Good morning, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It certainly can be. And I'll tell you what, I've done obviously, as every actor in Hollywood has their fair share of background, and there's nothing I hate more than like they're like, all right, background, laugh, and it's like a bunch of people with strangers from like, what is it called, central casting, and you're just like
yeah, and you're like watermelon.
Yeah, watermelon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I don't know why I asked that.
No, that's okay. I think it's because you were so
I think you were doing such a good job. I was like, how are you doing that? Oh my goodness.
I wish I had more of like a fun laugh. I wish I had like an outrageous laugh, or like a laugh that is actually like fun to listen to. I feel like my laugh is just like so like Fabian always makes fun of me because he says when I laugh, like my shoulders go up. Oh God, that's so embarrassing.
Wait, I'm so sorry, but you're so off about that. Your laugh is intoxicating.
Oh.
Yeah, I like literally there's so many Spitball clips I like watch back, and like when you start laughing, it makes me laugh really hard.
I feel the same way about you.
Oh my God. I love laughing with my friends.
I love my friends.
When you start laughing, I always have a good time.
She.
Or the lice clip. Oh.
The lice clip was cracking me up. Have you ever had lice? No. Moving on.
I haven't. I really haven't.
Yeah.
Although I'm wearing this cool hat that I thrifted, so I might get them soon.
Nice.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling good. It feels like it's a busy time, and I feel like I get caught in these cycles so often, where I used to do this in college all the time, where like things will be busy and I'll just say, I just have to get to Friday. Or like, oh, I just need to get to next week. I just need to get to October this date.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
you also got to live in the moment.
Right. I'm like, I'm wishing time away. You know, what am I doing here?
I relate to that.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, a New Year's resolution of mine was literally be more present in the moment, because I was always doing that. I was like looking forward like way far ahead, and then you realize that you've like missed the moments that like counted, right? Like I always kind of think of that when I go to yoga, like on days where I'm like, I don't feel like doing this, I don't feel like working out or whatever, I just want this class to be over. And then I realized that like I was so like consumed with like wanting it to be done that I like missed the practice that was like beneficial to like my mind and spirit.
Right. And it's just kind of also like, why? Like, is it because what we are doing isn't something worth being excited over, you know?
No.
Like even today, I just was like, I have a lot of different things that I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, once I get to the end of the day, it's gonna be great. But then we showed up here and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm so psyched to be here.
Exactly.
I don't want this time to end. I don't want to just jump to the next thing. I want to be happy and live this out.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it is over, I can be like, okay, awesome, done. And let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, I think that life is like not a to-do list and you got to be present in the moment. But it is hard when there's a lot going on and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's hard to like sit and marinate in what's happening. Like I just went to a comedy show that I was really looking forward to. I went to see like my favorite comedian since I was a kid.
Oh, who?
Brian Regan.
Cool.
I like literally like my parents used to put on his specials when I was a kid. He's very clean humor because he's smart.
Yeah. True.
And he like my parents used to put on his specials on the living room stereo, and we'd like sit and listen to them. Like when I was like 5, 6.
How special.
And then I went and I saw him on all of his tours and whatnot. And then I just got to see him the other night. I went with Luke. And I was like, I think I was really so looking forward to it that I really like had like a post-show crash. Sad. Like now I'm like sad.
Aww.
Like I was like, I was really looking forward to that. And I kept telling myself during the show, I was like, I have to live in this moment. Like, oh God. And I remembered I get such bad anxiety. If I have to pee, I can't focus on anything else. And right as the show was starting, I was like, do I have to pee?
Right.
And I felt like I was like thinking about that the whole time. And I was like, stop thinking about pee. You're not going to pee your pants. Just enjoy the show.
That happens so often with like trips too, where it's like so much time is spent anticipating it. And it's like, I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited for this. And then it comes and goes.
Yeah.
So quick. And then you're like, okay, well, that's already finished with. Like, I was so excited for this trip, for this travel, for this, like, event that I was going to, and it's already over. Like, what?
That's why I literally never, I think I feel this way now, and I hope that I feel this way for the entirety of my life, but, like, I never feel sensitive or upset about, like, my age. Because it's, like, I think as, like, when we're young people, like, we can never, like we're always looking forward or missing something, you know what I mean? It's like when you're a young person in high school, middle school, you're like, I can't wait till I'm this age so I can do this. I can't wait till I can drive. I can't wait till I can buy cigarettes. I don't know. Like I can't wait till I can do these things. And then like you grow up and you're like, oh, I wish I could go back to that. But like it's about finding the moments that are valuable that you can do right now.
Yeah.
Because eventually you'll want more, or you'll wish you'll be there again. Which makes me think, I meant to tell you this before we started rolling cameras. I have about 20 pages left of the book that I'm borrowing from you, the Tuesdays with Maury. Did you read it? I can't remember.
So that piece was performed so often in speech. So I saw it as a piece over and over. I haven't read it front to back yet, though.
I love it, and it's really, really good. And I wanted to finish it by today to return it to you, but I'll get it to you.
Oh, no worries.
But there's kind of a moment like in the book where the student that is with Maury is like saying like, you know, reflecting on age and being like, don't you wish you could go back in time and don't, what, you know, I'm this, that, whatever. And Maury's like, why would I want to do that? I'm not jealous of you. I already did that age. Like, I already did it. Why would I be jealous? I've done it. I got to experience it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I think it really is about being present and enjoying every moment for what it is right now.
Absolutely. One of my friends, for her birthday, she posted like all these lessons that she's learned. And I loved one of them where she wrote, life only gets better.
Yeah.
And I feel like I resonate with that so much because I'm constantly, like thinking about, oh, what has already happened for me? What's behind me? Like, like life is catching up to me. Like all my big milestones are behind me and I want to stay young and all of these things. And it's like, actually, no. Like we always say this too. Like, yes, childhood was wonderful and great. But how awesome is it to be in your 20s and get to do whatever the hell you want?
Literally, hell yeah. Literally, hell yeah.
Like, we have our own places and we get to go choose whatever we want to eat. And if we want to eat like shit and do whatever, like, There's nobody really stopping us.
The other day, I literally decorated my Switch with a bunch of like a new skin and accessories and stuff, and I literally called 8 of my friends, and I was like, "Look what I did because I have adult money and I can do this,
and I can,
yeah, and little kids can decorate their Switch too, but so can I,
right?"
And it makes me happy.
So interesting, too, that you bring up this concept with the book of aging. I'm not going to say anything more, but have you seen... All right, and that's our episode.
And thank you, guys. Make sure you tune in next Monday.
Have you seen or heard of The Substance?
Okay, yes. Maddie went to see it the other day, and I've heard lots of different reviews. I have purposely not looked anything up.
Good.
I think I'm going to go see it. I was going to maybe go see it tomorrow.
You absolutely should.
Okay.
You absolutely should. I also won't say, I've already said too much in connecting it. But it is fabulous and topical. And I just feel like we would have so much to discuss with it too. So watch it and then we can discuss it on here.
Okay. And I'm so glad that you said that because I do want to see that. And it's on my agenda for this week. And guess what I saw? Speak No Evil. Yes. Have you seen it? Well, yes. And exactly.
Yes.
Did I tell you about what happened to me when I did that recently?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, I saw the movie. We were making fun of Speak No Evil when Matt was on because literally they've advertised it out the ass. And there's so many trailers. And I was like, certainly this movie is going to be horrible. Did you see it?
I saw it.
I loved it.
It
was awesome. I'm
was
going to see
fun.
it again on Wednesday.
Oh, I would totally see it again.
Yeah,
it was like...
Loved it.
It was thrilling. And it wasn't too like I wasn't uncomfortable. I wasn't constipated. Yeah. I was definitely like at the edge of my seat, but I was like, oh, this is exciting. It made me feel a lot of things. I thought it was great. I saw it with Logan and Fabian and they both were just like done with the daughter too. The whole time they were like,
yeah, they're like, leave your goddamn bunny.
Right.
Leave your hoppy.
I thought it was great. I thought James McAvoy was awesome.
I love James McAvoy.
It's so funny too. We watched that movie and then we were like, let's look up James McAvoy's other credits. And I found out he's the voice of Nomeo in Nomeo and Juliet. So then we went home and watched Nomeo and Juliet.
Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone knows that.
I didn't know that. And you know what? You know who's Juliet? Emily Blunt?
Duh.
My mother.
Everyone knows. Oh, you and Emily Blunt are mother-daughter?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I didn't even freaking know that she was Juliet. She sounds so different. They like youthified her voice.
That sounded like you were going to say euthanize. Like, oh my God.
They baptized her voice to get her on Juliet.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. And I do love James McAvoy.
Stacked
I mean,
cast.
he's been... Because some of my favorite movies are the new age It films, and I think that James McAvoy is great as Bill and Billy in
He's
that.
awesome.
But I loved the movie. I thought it was fun. Like I said, I literally have my A-list booking to go see it again this week. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the writing was very strong, and I loved how female forward it was.
Oh, yeah,
respectfully, how it was like the mom did everything. Like she was aware of how stupid her husband was. Like she was like, oh my God.
The one like fault or like any sort of like stupid decision that was made, which was definitely them initially, which by the way, spoilers, if you haven't seen it, this is the time to skip.
Yeah, skip ahead.
We'll put a little marker for when you're safe.
Skibbity skip.
But the stupid decision was them agreeing to go on this long weekend trip with people that they met once, so obviously that's a strike, but you can see why she did that. She was like, no, don't do that, and then she saw her marriage kind of being like, ugh.
Her marriage was on the rocks, and she was in the wrong, so she was like, I owe him something.
Exactly. So then she was like, okay, no, we should go, it'll be fine. But the whole time she was a great mother, she was always advocating. He was... There's this word in Hindi that is perfect to describe him, which he's a laloo. Like he is
like a moron idiot.
A moron. That's great. Yeah, he's a moron.
He's like, a loser.
He stayed quiet so many times that it was just like, hello?
Right.
And I loved that one detail too, when they were when he's apologizing for having fed her meat. And he's like, oh, like my bad. And then he turns to him and he's like, I'm so sorry, mate.
Uh-huh.
And it's like,
yeah.
Why apologizing to him? Why are you saying sorry to him?
No,
I
and
didn't
exactly.
understand
That part as a vegetarian made me sick.
Right. But it's like, what? Did you break his little toy and you're apologizing to him?
Exactly. It's yeah. It was very layered, very interesting, very suspenseful, and I like when things in movies are very disturbing but not like inherently at face value, right? Like the whole bringing the kids to sleep in the bed with them. Like, of course, that, like, I loved that warranted, so, again, if you have not seen this movie, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
But, like, I love that warranted her being like, we have to leave. That is so weird and inappropriate.
That was so weird.
Whereas, like, some people might be like, what's the big deal? But it's like, no, weird.
No. That was strange.
I really enjoyed the movie. And me and Bridget were talking the whole time, like, when afterwards, when we were reflecting on the movie, about there is nothing more that I hate than being, like, in a situation, like, in a place I don't know, with people I don't know. That movie, like, gave me the sensation I used to experience, like, when I would, like, go to, like, a person from school's house that I kind of knew for, like, a sleepover. And I was like, your house is weird and your sheets are weird and your family's weird.
Right. And it's just like, I just got to get out of here.
And it's like, maybe they're not even weird. It's just different. Like, I feel like I'm really sensitive to environment. And when I'm unfamiliar, it, like, makes me, like, freak.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I really empathized with the wife who was like, I hate it here. Like, I feel so uncomfortable. And the husband's just like, whatever.
Right. And I loved, the last thing I'll say is I loved that final little reveal too, where the wife was begging to go with them. She was like, wait, take me. I was his first victim.
God, yes. Oh, God.
Huge reveal. It was a great reveal. It wasn't, I didn't predict it.
No.
You could have, but like, you didn't. Or I didn't, at least.
I didn't.
I thought it was great, and I thought it was still good that they still made the choice to, like, leave and not take her with them, because obviously she was still violent.
Yeah.
But you could see that she had chosen to overlook a lot of the shots that she could have taken. Like, when they were leaving by the dresser, she had a clear shot and she didn't take it.
Yep.
You know, like,
she had Stockholm syndrome, but, like, it would, like, still kind of there.
Definitely.
And aware of the wrongness of the situation.
Right. I think the right thing would have been if they could have escaped, called the police, and then they could have dealt with all of that.
Yeah, it was tough.
Hopefully.
One of those situations where you're like, what would I do?
Yeah.
I do have to tell you really quick about this.
Yeah.
I was doing this the other day, and I was sitting, and Vince was with me, and Bridget was with me, and we were on the tram. And literally, we, like, hit a bump, and I was doing this, like, so hard, like, trying to be funny, that when we hit the bump, I, like, punched myself in the nose and gave myself a nosebleed.
What?
And literally, I was so, like, embarrassed, and it was, like, dark. So I was like, I don't want to, like, draw attention to this, but, like, Vince is here and Bridget's here, and I had been like, and so I just went quiet, and I was like, oh, and then I, like, put my hands down, and, like, I, like, it's because my nose ring dug into my thing, but I, like, literally, like, had blood on my hands, and they were like, what?
Oh, I literally always do that, where you, like, you hurt yourself, and then you're like, I'm a bother.
I speaked no evil too hard myself.
That's great. Well, one more moment that I need to discuss too is the whole, like, that sexual thing that they did.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring it up, and I was like, yeah, like, I hated that. I hated that.
That was when I was constipated.
I know. I was literally in the theater like this, like,
right.
I was
like, what do you do when you're across the table from people that are acting like that? Like, they were kind of laughing. I feel like I would laugh.
Well, unfortunately, I felt like that was, like, genuinely, if it had been real, like, if they had really been performing that, I feel as though that would have just genuinely been
harassment.
Yeah, like yeah. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, James McAvoy's face during that, like, when he like was essentially, they pretend they're, like, performing head in front of this family who didn't ask.
They're performing this act of head
of you might have heard of it, head. And he's just, like, making eye contact with them, and I was like, oh God,
it's tough.
It is tough. If that were me, I'd literally be like, can you put your dick and balls away?
Right. I'd be like, are you guys actually?
Yeah.
Oh,
are you sucking?
Are you head?
Mrs. Head, get up here.
Get over there.
Oh, God. Well, speaking of head.
Speak no evil.
I and you sometimes are a little sick in the head.
That's true.
If you can believe the way that we introed this episode today, we are talking about mental health.
It's not funny.
Well, actually, I'm glad that you say that. Because yes, it is. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're right. It can be.
I do want to say that we want to talk on this episode like about mental health and our like experiences with it and whatnot. But at the end of the day, please do remember, this is Spitball. Yeah. And everything that we talk about is bred from our experiences. And one thing about me is if I don't laugh, I'll cry. So if this is a little silly goofy, we're going to touch on things as sensitive as possible. But don't be a big weird freak about it.
Yeah. We're keeping it lighthearted in here. Speaking of Spitball, did you see somebody commented spaghetti ball?
Spaghetti. Literally, my favorite thing is looking through the comments and seeing what everyone comments.
Me
like, in
too.
Terms of
Spaghetti ball gave me a really big laugh. I loved that.
Did you see the comment that was like, okay, having the chessboard set up wrong immediately is insane?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. And I was like, well, we're also just not playing chess. So there's also sticky notes on the board.
I tried to set up the chessboard.
I don't know, girl.
Whatever.
We were talking about lice.
Right. But yes, we want to talk about mental health. I was telling you this too. I feel like I've also gone to a few stand-up comedy shows.
Ugh.
And a few different people have talked about how like self-care is like like that is like, I think not growing up, but actually like going through college, specifically, self-care was huge. Like it was like, oh, like take a self-care day, do this for your self-care. If you can't come to this class for self-care, like you could just like, you literally just say it's for self-care, it's for my mental health, like, and people respected that boundary enough to where you could literally take advantage of it and be like, I'm not coming because of self-care,
right?
Period. But it genuinely is a very real thing, and again, aside from the comedy aspects of it, like, yeah, sometimes you do have to be like, hey, I can't come to this because I need to actually just take care of myself.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how there has been like, as we like have entered into the generation that we are in, there's like this like stigma about mental health as if, and it's so weird to me why people can't wrap their head around the fact that like mental health is a severe thing. Like it's like people think like mental health isn't a thing, and then like it's just as much of a thing as oral health or like physical health.
Any type of physical health.
Literally, that's the most important thing you should be paying attention to. Your brain is like the mitochondria of your whole existence.
Right. It feels like maybe because there isn't like a visual aspect to it sometimes, or like even with physical health, right? Like a lot of the times we're like, oh yeah, there's this like mark on my body, but I don't know what it is. And then you go to a doctor and the doctor's like, that's what that is. And then you're like, I'm freaking out.
I guess
and now you have a name on it.
You're right. Like it's like because a lot of times people can't like see it, they're like, it's not real or whatnot. But it's like, I've just never understood that notion of if like why like the older generation per se is like, everybody's got anxiety now, and everyone these days has ADHD, and I'm like, y'all have it too. You're just undiagnosed and unwell.
Absolutely. Mental health is often excused as, weakness. Like, it's like, oh, you can't handle the pressure. Oh, you don't have enough ambition or drive, or, oh, you can't get out of bed. Like, no, it's not that you're depressed. You're just lazy.
Absolutely not.
And it's like, what? No, like, these are actually very real, very debilitating things that are happening to mostly everybody, like if not everybody. There are people that are just sometimes better equipped to handle certain things, but that's just kind of like the cards that you're drawn, that you're dealt.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe the mindset that is because people are scared and they don't want to admit that perhaps they also participate in, not participate, but like maybe they have their part in it. Because I think that's why a lot of like, I talk about this with so many people, right? How our parents' generation and whatnot, we're not as therapized as like we are.
Right.
And also not so willing to like talk about it because it's like almost like personal. Like it's like parents these days will be like, well, my kid doesn't have this, that, whatever. They're fine. And it's like, no, it's nothing you did. Your child might just be struggling with like literally like a deficiency that they need help with.
Right. And it's like, God forbid they would see a therapist, you know, like you suggest that and they're like, I'm not crazy. Why would I need a therapist?
Everyone can benefit from therapy. This is like a hill that I will die on.
Yeah.
Is that like, I know, because I talk a lot to people and they'll be like, I don't need that. I'm like, I think when people say like, I could never do therapy or I don't never need that, I'm like, I think maybe you just don't understand what it is.
Right. You have a different idea of what the shrink entails. Like you're like, oh, I'm going to be like strapped up and people are going to tell me that I'm crazy and all these things. And it's like, you're literally just going in there and vibing with a friend who you don't have to hear about their life. You just tell them about yours.
I feel like getting into therapy was like literally what jump-started so many things that like led me to be on the path that I'm on right now, which was like a healing journey that I needed to literally take to like actually preserve my life.
Absolutely.
And so like when people talk ill of therapy, I'm like, man, respectfully keep that to yourself, because if we're out here saying that like you can solve your own problems and this and that, whatever, like there are people out there who need the help.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are saying like, oh, that's like a bunch of phony baloney and you are discouraging them, you know, it's like that might be really what that person needs. Like it makes me think about when I knew that I needed to get sober, which was years ago. I mean, frankly, for the majority of the time that I was in active addiction, I read like so many books about getting sober, and I just kept reading them. I kept drinking and I kept reading them. I kept doing drugs and I kept doing like whatever. And there was like one book that I found really helpful. I really, really liked it. And I don't want to name it because I am about to slander it in a moment. Well, I don't know. I read this book and it was like this feminist forward literature about women and alcohol and addiction and how sobriety can look for women and whatnot. And I found it very inspiring and helpful, and I loved everything it said. But then there was a certain chapter about why certain recovery groups are like bad for women. And because I had liked in that author's opinion, and because I had liked the rest of the book so much, I figured, well, they must be right about this chapter. I should not seek help within this specific recovery group because it won't be good for me. I shouldn't be there because this author says so. And I'm extremely resentful of that because I now am in that recovery group and it has saved my life. And I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about like people saying like shitting on therapy when it really might be what the missing piece that someone needs to get better.
Totally. Because you never know who is listening to you in that same circle of conversation that was maybe going back and forth about it, and then they hear someone else's opinion and that sways them to be like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. And they might need it.
In a vulnerable moment. Yeah.
Right.
When they're like, what do I need to do so I can stay here and I can get better? And they're like, everything's circling around and everyone's got different opinions on antidepressants and therapy and what have you.
Yeah.
It's like at the end of the day, what works for you works for you.
I think for me, it definitely felt relieving in a way. Like, because for me, I got diagnosed with OCD in my therapy. And before that, I had always equated it to just being superstitious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Right. In high school, especially like in speech and debate, like I would often, and I talked about this actually with some other people as well, but like I would sit there and, before I would like go up and perform, I would need like my shoes to be inside of the square on the ground, right? Or I would need my hands to be a certain way. I'd need to tap on things for a number of times or whatever. And in my head, I was like, that's just me being superstitious. Like, that's just me needing to make sure that this round is going to go in my favor.
Right.
And obviously that was me trying to take control of it in an environment that was not in my control at all. It was clearly up to the judge, the numbers, the luck. There was so much subjectivity involved with it. I had nothing to do with it, but this was me trying to exercise any ounce of control.
Right.
And then as it kind of started manifesting in my career, again, a career that has zero control, right? With acting, auditions, the industry you don't have any predictability. You don't have any say in what you're going to do. So it certainly comes out when I'm trying to take control in other ways, like who I can tell about my auditions or, how much I want to say about how I feel about how it went and how my performance was and stuff like that. And it got to a point where it was like incredibly debilitating. It really was delaying a lot for me. Oof. And I felt awful. And that's when I started bringing that stuff up in therapy. And I was like, this is feeling really hard. And I'm feeling especially superstitious about these things. And that's when my therapist was like, well, how important is it that you do these superstitions and stuff like that? So it ultimately felt, again, I guess freeing in a way to be like, oh, like that's what that's called. And it
feels so good to like literally put a name to it.
And also just to feel at least like not alone in it.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, like I love reading literature for other people that have OCD and them describing like any of the certain things. Cause the way that I see it is like, oh, that's crazy. The stuff that I tell myself, I'm like, oh my God, like what is wrong with me? But then I'll read something similar that someone else says to themselves and I'm like, oh my gosh, they say something similar to themselves. Like this is, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's not me.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, honestly, I find extreme comfort in when you can put a name to something because it means other people are experiencing it.
Exactly.
Whereas like I can understand that maybe some people could be like, oh, like there's a name for it. There is something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way at all. I think that is really like such a good way of summing up OCD and the superstitions. And I know how like I don't have diagnosed OCD, but I do feel that I have OCD tendencies, but not in the way that like society has normalized it where it's like, the lemon bowl is crooked. I have OCD and I have to fix it.
Right.
But I have kind of like I get it very much at nighttime where I'll be like, I can't literally fall asleep unless I like go touch my door handle.
Yeah.
But not in a way that's like super debilitating. But I do know how inconvenient it is. And I can't imagine moving through my daily life kind of having to navigate that with every motion I make.
Right. I mean, it's for an audition, which this is kind of a great way to include this funny story, but for an audition.
Oh yeah, I love this.
There was a role that had schizophrenic tendencies. And so I was doing some research online, and funny enough, I did it unknowingly, I was doing it on the Spitball YouTube profile.
I was checking on a Spitball episode, and I like went to our channel, and all of like the recent watch history is just like living with schizophrenia. What's schizophrenia like? How do I know if I'm schizophrenic? Having a schizophrenic episode on camera. And I literally texted Arasha. I said, hey, I literally was like, are you okay? I'm here for you if you need to talk. Like, what's going on?
Right.
And then you didn't answer for like a day. And I was like, oh my God. And you were like, oh yeah, that was for an audition. I was so scared. I was like, are you okay?
No. Completely okay. It's such a funny story. I was just doing my research, doing my work to make sure I had an accurate audition. And don't worry, it wasn't me portraying somebody with schizophrenia. It's a whole long story that I can't actually explain because of the content of the audition. Oh, sure. But anyway, through these videos, I actually learned a ton about what it's like to live with schizophrenia. And like, it is haunting.
Oh my God, I know.
Like, there is actually a guy on TikTok, a person on TikTok, and they do like schizophrenic simulators.
I've seen this.
And just kind of like, they're also an artist, so they like draw some visuals to kind of show people like what they see and what they hear. And so I watched a ton of those, and they were very scary. Like I just was like, oh my gosh, how is anybody like just even existing, But the part that felt familiar was at least like the voices in the head.
Oh yeah.
Because that's almost what I felt like I related to in the OCD aspect of like, I feel like I also am like, when I go against one of these like tics, I can feel that voice in my head being like, well, all right, but you're going to risk this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
oh God,
who is that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Make that go away.
Get out.
Get out.
Yeah. That is tough.
It's challenging. But you're right. Like, it is, I think, it's hopefully a good perspective to have, a positive one at least, to feel that relief when there's a name for what you're experiencing, because then you don't feel like you're the only one, because you're not.
Yeah.
Like, even the most rare diseases, like, hopefully you know that you're not the only one experiencing that, or you're not the only one experiencing things similar to that, right? Like OCD tendencies, very real. If you don't even have diagnosed OCD, like, you might be experiencing something similar, and behavioral therapy might be great for you. Medication might be great for you. Like, whatever kind of helps quiet the voices down a little bit and help you live a little bit more in a stable sense.
Yeah.
That isn't taking over your actions, that isn't limiting you.
Yeah, I feel like so many people have like opinions these days, and it's like, you gotta just like let people do what they want, like what works for them. You know what I mean? If it's like a matter of like life and death, or like at like intense struggling and peace, just let people do what they need to do, as long as it's like, it's the golden rule, as long as it doesn't harm others, like, and you're just focused on you. Sure.
Right.
I had something I dealt with in it started in 2019, and it's like something that like I feel like I don't hear a lot about, and so it was very scary for me when I started going through it. But it was definitely when I was obviously in like active addiction, and I was like drinking so much. And like, if you know anything about like real, like true like alcohol addiction and stuff, it's so dark, and it's hard to function with it, but it's almost impossible to function without it. And it just messes with your head and your life and your body and so much stuff. And my mom used to tell me, she'd be like, when you do this, you're like drinking anxiety, like you're putting it in your body, because the alcohol is a depressant, and it's lowering your levels and it's hurting you. But like when you're in addiction, you're like, no, it's not. I love this. Like, but then you step away from it and you realize, like, now going into now 7 months sober, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that I had completely messed with myself. But I essentially had like a weekend where I did like a ton of drugs, and I came out obviously feeling horrible, like just like serotonin levels like at the absolute bottom. And I just had this sensation and this feeling that I'd never experienced before in my life, where I felt like I was just like 1 inch behind myself. And I was like, whoa. Ooh. And I was like, felt like I was like touching things and like looking at my hands. And I felt like I was like, oh my God, I'm like in my body, but not all the way.
Whoa.
Like I'm just a little bit behind myself. And I spent weeks like this. I felt like I didn't even talk to anybody, because I was in a constant state of like looking around, and I was being like, nothing is real. Nothing is here. Like, I am not real. I can't, like, nothing feels where it's supposed to be. Like, I was so freaked out. And I finally went to a friend, and I was like, I don't know any other way to describe this, but like when you're playing a video game and it's from like a first person perspective, and the video game's characters, like their hands are like in the camera view and you're like moving around and moving it and stuff. I was like, that is how I feel. Whoa. And my friend said, oh yeah, you're experiencing derealization. And I was like, what? And I did a ton of research about like disassociation and derealization and all this stuff. And I was once again horrified, but so relieved that I was like, oh my God, a ton of people are going through this. And here I was thinking that I had done so many drugs that I had broken my brain.
Right.
Like, And I was like, I literally was like, I kept telling myself, I was like, way to go. You had one brain and you messed it up and it's broke. You unplugged something.
And I don't think that again, like, you're not alone in that. And I also don't think you're alone in that thought, right? So many people think like, oh, I'm the only one experiencing this very strange occurrence or this very specific thing that I'm going through. Something is wrong with me. It's easy to just be like, it's only me.
Yeah.
So many other people.
Yeah.
So many other people. And it's almost like twisted too, because you're not supposed to look it up, because then you look up medical symptoms and then you're like, great, it's something terrible. And it's
right.
So it's a little bit harder, which is why therapy is this like very individualized approach to this person who gets to hear specifically what your life is about and what you're going through in that moment, what you feel free to talk about, and then they're able to give you like their expertise instead of just like a general web search of like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And then finding an answer that doesn't actually feel quite right.
Right. If you know anything about me, it's that I love Bo Burnham. And when he released his Inside special on Netflix in 2020, there's this song called That Funny Feeling. And it like really like spoke to me. I was listening to it on the way here. This special is like so near and dear to my heart. I literally have an Inside tattoo. But there's a part where he says, like, total disassociation, fully out your mind, Googling derealization and hating what you find. And like literally, I was like, that was me.
Wow.
Because it's like you Google the symptom and it's literally like, yeah, this is something that happens when you feel like nothing's real and you're constantly panicked and whatever. But I do think that it was a side effect of my excessive addiction, because I literally have like, I do experience it now, but when I feel it, I go, oh, okay.
That's what that is.
Before I used to like, I'd like feel it like setting on and I'd go, ah! Like I wanted to just like turn off and be like, ah! But now I'm just like, okay.
For sure. I know something that I also felt like deep, especially when I was like going into my 20s, was a lot of relationship anxiety.
Okay.
I specifically was like, I was very lost in terms of like how to be a good partner, I think, especially when I was in my first relationship. I fell into this very codependent state of being. And you know, like my partner too, like we both just kind of attached to each other and very quickly just were like, we're going to be together all the time. And, you know, we're going to separate for class, but then I'll meet you right outside of that classroom. And then we're going to go get food. And then we're going to go do this. And then we're going to go do this. And it was in a different way, building tearing down my mental health, you know, because it's like, a big part of your mental health is also like your individual psyche, your independence.
Oh, yeah.
And when that becomes kind of shared with another person, then their problems become your problems and your problems become their problems. And that's just not the way to live. Like, because if somebody else is going through something, you cannot take that on as much as they are. Like, you can't, because you can't control then how they're going to get out of that situation. Yeah. You can't control any of the emotions, or you're not directly involved in the relationships that they are dealing with inside of that problem too. So it's just a whole mess that ultimately you're asking for when you fall into this codependency thing. And it took a long time, I think, for me to unlearn all of that, because then when we eventually broke up, I was half a person. Like I wasn't able to stand on my own because I was like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to. So that built a lot of this feeling of like, I am not enough, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I can't tell right from wrong anymore because I don't have this other person who I usually ask. Like what to do and where to go and how do I feel, and if anything is then slightly off between us, everything's ruined. You know, if there's just like the slightest bit of conflict between us, I can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not able to separate that because that is my life. It was.
Yeah. And when you like make a codependency and anxious attachment cocktail, it's like the worst like combination because we're anxious attachment girlies. Although I feel less that way these days.
I think so too. I'm feeling secure.
It's wild when you have a partner who like literally reciprocates love and comfort and security, how I don't have to be stressed 24/7.
Right. They respect you and they communicate with you and they have shown you time and time again that you can't scare them.
Right. Something I was not familiar with.
Right. Right.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But that is a horrible feeling of the codependency, the anxious attachment, and then like unfortunately you had to go through like a breakup and being like, oh, I guess I don't know who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I started therapy. I was in that relationship and something had kind of clicked in me. I had become aware, I think about maybe like a year in of, like I'm unwell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm unwell because if things aren't going perfectly well, something feels messed up with me and I can't carry on. I'm unable to socialize with my friends without thinking about my partner and being like, I need to be around them or else it just feels wrong. And that sucked. That felt like not me.
Yeah.
Like that was just like, what am I doing? I want to be with my friends and hang out and feel free with my schedule, not feel like I had to be with my boyfriend all the time. Like I didn't like that. So eventually I started therapy and I remember being like, that's how I showed up. I sat down and I was like, I don't know how to exist without my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I'm a mess.
Right.
And that's when I kind of picked up on those terms like codependency and anxious attachment, and started learning like, oh, okay, like there does have to be some degrees of separation in order for you to remain a pillar on your own.
And what do you always say? Do your little thing. I like it.
Oh, yes. I just shared this as well on Smosh and people loved it. My therapist taught it to me a while ago.
It was also on Spitball season 1.
Right.
I tell so many people this.
Yeah. It's like you want your relationship to be not an A where these are the two people involved and this is the relationship or the connection between. Because then you're leaning on each other. Even when the relationship is gone, you're like, I can't even stand still. But if the relationship is an H, you have this connection, this relationship. If the relationship falls through, you both are still stable people on your own. So
it's awesome.
Yeah, again, like tools that I learned in therapy and that I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah.
When did you first start therapy?
I did a little bit of therapy in high school, but I really started moving towards therapy in like 2022, 2023. I had a lovely therapist, but I don't see her anymore because of insurance things. And I really do like her, and I think she's great, but I don't think she was right for me.
Yeah. Don't get me started on health insurance.
And we could do a whole other episode because here we are being like, seek help if you have $1 billion.
Right.
It's insane.
No, health insurance is actually like so frustrating. And,
it really
and that's
is.
why it's like, I'm sure so many people are like, I'm trying to get therapy and I just can't.
Right.
And we hear you.
We hear you, absolutely. I'm not in therapy right now, and that's not my choice. It's just I can't afford it. And it's like you got to go through the motions of finding a therapist, which we'll talk about. But the truth is my therapist was really nice, but she dealt with issues that were a little bit outside of, I was heavily in addiction and I was going to her fucked up. I remember one morning I went to her, I was like having like a insane come down off of like some shit I had taken the night before. And I just like, I like had to go because it was like I didn't want to cancel and get like the late fee.
The fees.
I, like showed up like high out of my mind, like tweaking, like literally like, and she's just like, are you okay? But wait, what was the question?
When you started therapy?
Oh.
But you said you had this therapist.
Yeah,
who didn't quite work out.
It just I was lying to her about my using of things and drinking and whatnot. And I will say though, a huge thing I needed to go to therapy for, and this was the main thing that we did kind of focus on, was I had a lot of work to do on my inner child. And if you don't think that's a real thing, you are wrong. Because my inner child needed a lot of help. And I do feel like we moved through that. I think fortunately, we were able to kind of focus on that. Unfortunately, it was not the right pairing for the condition that I was in and the help that I did need, which was just recovery, which is what I am now in. But it was great and did the inner child thing. I still practice things.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That is what therapy pretty much is. Like, we're here to debunk that, right? Like, no, you're not going to get like handcuffed and thrown into a mental institution. What will happen is likely a lot of just getting to know you and hopefully healing a lot of the stuff that has brought you to the person that you are today. And again, I also find a lot of that pretty freeing. Like, I will talk through things, and like, the last therapist that I just most recently worked with, what I loved about her was, I would recall some things that were particularly tough for me when I was younger. And most therapists would be like, okay, got it. Understood that happened to you. We're moving on. Every time you bring up an issue, I'm able to be like, oh, maybe it's because of what happened when you were a kid and whatever.
Yeah.
But this most recent therapist was like, hold on. Like, I want to go deeper into that because I feel like we haven't healed that yet. Like, let's go back into the mind of when you were 12 and actually like work through that instead of just being like, okay, that's the reason that you're acting like this. It's like, okay, cool, but how do I get better with that?
Yeah.
So finding a therapist that is willing to go through these exercises with you that resonate with you, one that you feel comfortable with, that you're also like, yes, I want to go down this ride. Like, I'm ready and I feel safe to have these conversations. Like, that always, I feel like, separates a good therapist versus a not so great one for me. And I actually just remembered too that like, while I officially had started my therapy journey back in 2019, I remember when I was in elementary school, I went to the counselor with one of my friends who I was fighting with and being like, we need a session.
I did that too.
We had like a
did
guidance counselor thing.
That's what I thought they were there for.
Yeah, no, and they absolutely are. Like, they are like, yes, we want to help you, like, just be people. And often guidance counselors like aren't really used for that. It's more just like logistical things, but they were very much able to help us like communicate. Like, we were kids, but we like, for some reason, and I remember like my mom didn't say anything. Like, I was like, we should go see the counselor about this. I was like 7 years old and we went in there and we had a great conversation and it worked out. Like, it has always been, I think, a department that you can go to and be like, I need help and I'm not embarrassed for it.
A meditation that my therapist had me do more recently when I was in therapy for my inner child, and I suggest this for some of you guys out there because I felt it really helped me, was to go into a meditative state, like try to meditate like a few times a day, which I have to do anyways because it's part of my program, and think about those moments from childhood that like you really had an impact on you, that you remember, that like are your trauma, and like go back into that situation as your adult self and just walk into it and go grab your inner child and get her out of there.
Oh.
Like, and that was so helpful for me.
Wow.
Was to like be able to just like enter and like go look at myself and just be like, come on, let's go.
Wow.
Like,
got chills.
We're just leaving this.
Yeah. I love that. Have there been other therapists that have done like, that have almost shown you like, oh, I like this therapist because they did this, or other therapists that you're like, oh, it's not a great fit because XYZ?
I don't know that I've had the privilege of shopping around with too many therapists, which I know is something a lot of people have to do. But I will say what I look for in a good therapist is tools, because I think like talking is great and whatnot. But what I want out of therapy is like tools and exercises to be able to assess situations when they arise, work through anxiety and panic attacks, and have like my toolbox of things that can help me.
Yeah.
So that's what I look for. Like, I like to leave a therapy session with a new like thing to do.
Yes. Like somewhat of like inspiration, kind of like, oh, that makes me feel like this. I agree. I think, I fall into the pattern of wanting my therapist to like me too much.
I know so many people who do that.
Yeah, and it's not good. It's not good because then you walk in and then you're like, oh, yeah. No, my week was good. Yeah. And it's like, it's okay. It's all right if your week wasn't great.
That's a codependent thing, I think.
Yeah?
Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, it could be. I think it's just like genuinely me wanting to show up and be like liked and please this therapist and be like, look how good of a client I am. I'm such a good student. I've been in a good mood. And it's like, no, it's okay if you're not. That's literally what they are there for. So in a weird way, it's like if I like my therapist like I like a friend, like I can't do that then. It's not a good fit because then I'm like, well, this is great. I'm making you laugh and you're making me laugh and I like our dynamic and I don't want to mess it up by being sad, like,
Huh. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And you're not the only, I have heard this from other friends of mine. I personally can't relate because I sit down and I'm like, what do I do? Yeah. But like literally I don't care if you think I'm a mess. But it is interesting. I think that is something that is a good tip for people where it's like, remember where you are. You're not at the hair salon, like yapping with your stylist. You're in therapy.
You're in therapy.
You don't have to appear any type of way. And at the end of the day, your therapist isn't going to be like, wow, that Arasha has it all together.
Right.
Like, it's like you're there to do the work.
Exactly. And it's their job to not judge you for that. But and it's your job to show up authentically, So for me, I think I personally look for a therapist that is warm and kind and somebody who is definitely there for my best interests. I had a friend who told me that they dropped this therapist because every time they'd show up, sometimes you talk about something at length in therapy, like the whole hour is about that. And then next week you show up and they ask you about that and you're like, I'm not really dealing with that anymore. I'm talking about something else. But my friend said that therapist kept being like, no, we're going to talk about what we were talking about last week. Like, you're running away from it. You're avoiding it. And she was like,
moving on.
No, I don't want to, She would almost be forced into talking about things that you don't actually want to. Again, the most recent therapist I had, another fantastic thing that she did, every single time we sat down, she was like, what would you like to talk about today?
Yeah.
And that's great. Like, I love a little check-in of like, how is this going and how is that going? But let the client kind of steer the conversation because it's like, this is what was on my mind this week or today or this morning or right now. And I need to address this at the moment.
That is a token of a good therapist. One of the craziest things my therapist ever said to me, but I'm so glad she did because I've done so much work on it now, I feel, was one day she was like, we were talking, she goes, you're very passive aggressive. And I was like, what? And I was like, oh. And she was like, no, it makes sense. And she was like, you're passive aggressive because you don't like confrontation, and you don't like confrontation because you weren't raised in an environment where you felt you could communicate effectively without being punished. And I said, read me.
Yeah.
Like, clocked.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, well, how do I fix that? And she was like, well, let's work on communication and like this, that, whatever. And not everything has to be so passive aggressive. Not you can just say to someone, this is how you made me feel, or I didn't like that you did this, or this. You don't have to like I felt like, and once she brought it to my attention, I was like, you're right, I am. And that was like one things I really, really feel that I took away from therapy was she helped me redirect that. And it was like something I wasn't even conscious of.
Yeah.
Which is right. And when you're passive aggressive, you're kind of like a huge bitch. At least I was.
Well, that's a huge part of therapy as well, right? Like, again, your therapist is not just going to fix you. You're not just going to go to therapy and then come out on the other end amazing after one session. Your job, right, like we said, to show up authentically, but to also hold accountability.
Yeah.
Be able to accept those things, not just being like, gosh, she's so wrong. I'm not passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, no, being able to be like, yeah, you're right. And you gave me the why. It's not just because I'm trying to be a dick. It's because I actually didn't get the right communication tools growing up. I'm getting them now, and I'm going to be better. Deciding to enroll in therapy is you choosing to do better for yourself. Again, if you can.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I wanted to spitball.
Okay.
Is, we've talked a lot about like specifically therapy, but maybe we can expand it and just do like what we do for ourselves, like self-care as a whole. Things that like, therapy may be included, but I loved meditation. I wanted to touch more on that one, like yoga, other practices that can really be like a nice like massage for your mental health.
Yes, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the Spitball idea I had, which was tools when you're having an anxiety attack. So maybe
perfect.
Yes. I also do want to give a shout out that I found my therapist on alma.com. So that helped me. If you are like, I don't even know the first thing about finding a therapist, that's how I found mine. Alma, ALMA.
Google searching like specifically for therapists, like a Google search can sometimes feel overwhelming because it's just like, what's going on? I know a lot of people like to go on Psychology Today, and there's a bunch of filters where you can do like what insurance you have, specifically what issues you're looking to address. You can also be selective about your therapist, like what gender or ethnicity or age group, if you have a specific like therapist in mind, which is totally okay.
Absolutely.
Like whoever you feel most comfortable with, you can quite literally like build your little sim therapist and see if there is someone like that on the other end. And then I recommend, this is literally how I used to do it before I would like be able to connect inside of like a portal or anything. Like there's a bunch of phone numbers, there's a bunch of emails, reaching out, just like mass being like, hey, whenever you're looking for new clients, I'd love to be added to the wait list or whatever. Do it when times are good, so then you'll be able to have options when times aren't so good.
Yep, exactly. Great advice.
Yeah. I wanted to say this on meditation too, because I love, love, love meditation. And whenever I get the chance to, I will do them. The biggest like piece of advice that I want to give with meditation, if you are fearful of it, or if you are like, I'm bad at it or whatever, like the biggest lesson I told myself, I learned this in the pandemic when I was doing it every day, like, it's okay to like zone out of your meditation. If you're listening and then you start thinking about like tomorrow and you're like, I got to do this and then I got to do this. And then you're like, oh shit, the meditation. And you get back to it. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to do. A lot of meditations will even say like, if you've drifted off, come on back.
Yeah.
Like they are going to bring you back. That whole act of just sitting down and even turning it on, you've already done it. You've already started the meditation. You're already better.
Right. You're not like a monk. Like you're allowed to sit and like have your mind wander. And
exactly.
Stuff. It's just about the grounding process and getting in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
calm.
I know we both like yoga.
Yes, I love yoga. I feel so self-care for myself. I feel my mental health is super reliant on my physical activity. So I like to do yoga. I like to run. If I like sit in my house for a day and I don't like do some kind of physical activity, I literally start to freak out. So staying active, but in a way that's not like, I don't really do it for my body. I just kind of do it because it does make me feel good. And if I like feel good physically too, then that's, God, my days of like literally being like, I have to have the perfect body are so over. I'm like, I just have to feel good.
Totally.
Like literally like it's all like every body is a good body as long as you are feeling good. And that's on that.
And if you are working out, like it's kind of really hard to be very like active in your fitness and not be feeling great mentally.
Yeah.
Like I don't know people that are like, oh yeah, I've been working out every day, but I've been like really struggling. Like fitness really, really helps you feel better about yourself and your life.
Unless they get like too like my entire value is dependent on like my physique. You know, then that's like a whole,
or
that's
like
almost
tracking.
a mental health thing. Like,
exactly.
But physical activity, reading, I'm a big reader. I think a huge way that I feel good about myself in my life is I don't spend time with people who make me feel like shit. And that's the hardest lesson that I had to learn. And I'm going to tell you now is that it's literally like, you sometimes you got to weed your garden and you got to really focus on the flowers in your garden and like stop hanging on to things that don't serve you and make you feel bad.
And you know what? That comes full circle too to the top of the episode where we were talking about like wishing away time. if you're like gonna go get like lunch with somebody who you despise and don't actually want to see, of course you're gonna be wishing away that time.
Don't do that. Literally, don't put yourself through that.
Right. Or you're just gonna be like, oh, I don't want to go to this lunch, but I have to, and I can't wait for it to be over. Just don't schedule that in the first place.
I saw a quote that I loved recently. If they couldn't talk, would their actions make you feel loved? And focus on those people. And also, what makes me feel good? Baths.
Right.
That's
skincare, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That is a really great quote to end that on. I love that. I'm going to be going through my contact list and think about what I would do if they couldn't talk.
If they couldn't talk, would their actions make you feel loved?
Yeah.
Think about that.
We should do a whole Spitball episode where we don't talk.
We could do that. I know sign language.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can just hold my hand.
Or I could laugh. Guys, thank you so much for watching.
Wait, you didn't say yours.
I think I did. Yeah, meditation, fitness, yoga. I started.
Okay.
Yeah. No, don't you worry.
Okay, so
You're always looking out for my mental health.
Well, I thought I was like, wait, I feel like I spitballed and you didn't.
No, I spitball. I spat.
One more thing that makes you feel good.
Okay. This is maybe just a me thing. No, it's not just me, obviously. I know there's more people like me out there. I love putting things away.
Okay.
Like I love getting into like a little cleaning frenzy or like a little like organizing frenzy.
Uh-huh.
I love that shit.
Sure.
I like give me a bin of like random stuff and be like, can we find a place for this in the house? And I'll see you in an hour. But it just makes me feel so good because I just feel like productive. But I also just feel like I got to be in my, like that's when I like to be in my own world. Mm-hmm. I'm a social being. Other than that, I always want to be around other people and do other errands with people. And at all times, I want other people around me. Mm-hmm. But when I'm organizing and putting things away,
bye.
Clear the room.
Absolutely.
Clear the room.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this episode gave you some tools or some insight about your mental health. We hope that our words were nothing but helpful or perhaps motivational. If we were off the mark with anything in regards to your specific mental health, like just try to keep in mind that we're speaking just in terms of our experiences, our feelings, and who we are showing up as today. So please don't take this as any medical advice. We are just two girlies trying to do our best.
Girlies that have a little bit of a lot going on in here.
And exactly.
And make sure that if you feel like you are struggling out there and if you need help, there are plentiful resources, especially when it comes to addiction. Don't sit around and wait for it to get better on its own. You can reach out and you can get help.
Absolutely. Communicate with the people around you, find support, and try to foster that independence on your own because you can get through it, especially with the right help.
We love you. And watch Spitball when you're feeling down or happy or horny.
Yeah. Watch it all.
Okay, we'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you next week. Don't forget to leave a review, rate, subscribe, like, do all the things.
A review is awesome.
Oh, they can leave a review, all right.
Sure
I'm going to check our Yelp.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.